When you're lying in bed at night, do you ever randomly remember some relatively minor social missteps or poorly chosen words you did or said years earlier and then beat yourself up over it, even though it really wasn't a big deal? If so, what happened? Part 1. First year of high school. It was one of those days before school starts. You meet your teacher and your parents are there. My teacher was handing me a piece of paper and I didn't see the paper, so I shook his hand. He said, "Oh," and my mom said, and I panicked and said, "I just wanted to be polite." So I still want to die when I think of that. For most of my education, I went to public school, and like most kids, I was socially awkward. For high school, I received an academic scholarship to a private Catholic school. It was a really big deal for my family. I didn't know anyone at the new school. Between an odd combination of academics, sports and the tail end of puberty, I became very popular in this new school. I wasn't used to the attention, and it definitely got to my teenage head. Nearly all of my social circles became around the new school and not with my old local friends. I'm in my junior year. I head to a McDonald's for lunch with a few friends from the new school. Working the counter, I see a girl who I used to go to public school with that I used to have a crush on. She just lit up when she saw me. She was so excited. And I was a bad teenager, and I just ignored her. I pretended I didn't recognize her. She looked so deflated when I didn't acknowledge her. Note this was the 90s. My family moved a few times after that. I settled down in a different part of the country after university. I never made it back to that town. I've replayed that jerkish moment 4 years now. Fast forward to one of those nights when I relive that moment, and I decide to look her up on Facebook to apologize. I find out she died 10 years ago in an auto accident. Since I found out her fate, I feel even more awful about that moment. In 7th grade, a cute girl asked me to sit next to her. I said my mom won't let me sit next to girls. My mom said no such thing. When I was in the 4th grade, I lived in the middle of nowhere and there was practically no minorities, just white country people. This Mexican family had just moved in and could barely speak any English, and I befriended one of the kids my age in school. He came over to my place, and we were both joking around about his bad English, just doing what kids do. I would pretend to speak with his accent, and then he would copy, and it was silly, stupid and innocent. My mom told me I was being really inconsiderate and how uncool it was to make fun of someone for not being able to speak English. I felt terrible. The next day at school, my friend came up to me and started joking with me again, but I just shook my head and looked down at my desk in embarrassment. He had no idea what was wrong, and I was too young and dumb to be able to explain my behavior to him. As I grew older, I spent probably 20 years thinking about that day and how much of a jerk I was to be friendly one day, and then without explaining anything, just stop talking to him out of embarrassment. I felt really bad about it for a long time, and often laid awake at night thinking about it. I ended up finding him on Facebook about a year ago, and we friended each other, so I told him how bad I felt about it and apologized. He just laughed it off and said it was no big deal, and he was still really thankful to find someone as friendly as me when he didn't know anyone here. He said he figured my mom had said something to me about it, and it never bothered him. I don't know if maybe he was just being nice to me or not, but it was such a relief to hear it. It really felt like a weight had been lifted off of me. Junior prom, I blurted out during dinner to my date, "I'm so bored," and I have no idea why it came out of my mouth. I'm pretty well-mannered and quiet. I forget how I tried to play it off, but I felt so bad. I was sitting in a small group of friends in school, and my crush, literally the love of my life at that point, admitted she liked me. It was the happiest moment of my entire life, so naturally, I said, "EU," in front of everyone. This was 2nd grade, and I still think about it weekly. I was in 5th grade or so, and I was sitting in class with a couple classmates. We were talking about Weird songs we liked. This one girl asked, "Have you heard some Weird song?" And I followed with, "Have you ever heard I'm So Sick of You?" Which I guess they hadn't heard, because she looked immediately down at the desk, sort of somber, and the dude did a little hoo-hoo, as if I did a nice burn. I guess they thought I was telling this girl I was so sick of her. I had no clue at the time though, so I just let it ride, Still feel bad about that one. You reminded me of a similar situation for me, except I meant it. A girl my buddy had given my number to wouldn't leave me alone. Calls at all hours. Follows me in the halls. Tries to sit with me at lunch. I blocked her number and avoided her at all costs. One day at lunch, she sees me, beams at me, and makes a beeline right for me. I'm with all my buddies, and she stands there looking at me and waiting for me to ask her to sit down. Instead, the first thing to pop into my head was to grab a quarter in my pocket, stand up, show it to her, and at the top of my voice yell, "Here's a quarter, go buy yourself some friends." I then bounce it off the table at her, and it hits her square in the forehead, and all she does is stand there, while the entire lunchroom explodes in laughter. She runs out with tears streaming down her face. I calmly sit down and continue eating. It was so out of character for me, skinny, introverted band nerd, that it was the talk of the school for weeks about how brutal that was. I still think about it, and it's been 25 years. In 7th grade, 06 for me, I had just started watching more anime on Toonami and was really into it. One day, we had to do a paper describing ourselves coming back from summer break, and the class had to put a person to a description. I named my favorite jacket that I wore every day Takeshi, for who knows why, and the cutest new girl in the class read my description out loud, and in it, I described the love for my jacket and how I had named it as it is. The cute girl looks weirded out, stares at the class and goes, "What weirdo names their jacket?" Once no one guessed who it was, I piped up and said, "Well, maybe they aren't here today." Trying to cover myself, my reckless self forgot, though, that this was an in-class assignment, and the teacher said, no, it had to have been written by someone here. Finally, one of my friends goes, "Hey, aren't you like the only one in class who plays soccer?" Also written in my description. I sunk in my seat as we moved on to the next description. I wake up sweating, feeling that jacket still on my shoulders. Last year, I saw a 4-year-old kid with his father, and the kid wants to go to some place, but the father wants to go home. So the kid was crying and slowly running to some place, and the father was calling him to return now, and dummy said to the father, "If you want, I'll go get him for you." And there was a woman laughing at that, and the father, with a shocked or surprised expression on his face, said, "No, thanks." Was talking with a black friend of mine, and we were discussing random haircuts and styles we would get if we were other races. I said I wanted that common look. He thought I said, "That common look." I meant the rapper, shaved head with the nice trimmed up goatee. It didn't dawn on me until a week later why he gave me that weird look after I said it. He thought I was saying, "That common look every black guy has." Still makes me twitch every once in a while. When I walked down the aisle at my wedding, I was so nervous and focused on not tripping that I did not acknowledge my dad. I didn't realize this until I saw the video my aunt had made for me. You can see my dad lean in to give me a kiss on the cheek, but I just keep walking. He kind of shrugs and then goes to sit down. It's been 18 years, and this still flashes through my head when I'm trying to fall asleep. Also, that time I was trying to get to the school bus and the sidewalk was icy, so I slipped and fell really hard on my butt. The kids on the bus laughed at me, so I chose to sit there with my head down, wishing I could disappear, while the bus drove away and I walked a mile home. Yes, in the snow, uphill, and both ways. When I was about 8, for some reason, I thought that the word virgin was bad, so when my stepbrother, at the time, started calling me names, I thought it would be a good idea to fire back with, "Well, at least I'm not a virgin." And my dad's eyes got really wide, and he quickly explained to me what I had just said. 11 years later, I am still embarrassed. I've been overthinking everything I ever said or ever done, and now my brain's so deep in a web that my head has spun. I still think about when I said you to the deliveryman when he said enjoy your pizza. Back in elementary school, when it was time to go, all the kids would be lined up by the entrance and wait for their parents. Well, I saw my dad's car and went full speed running to it, jumped in, buckled up, ready to go. I look up, and that is not my dad. I had just jumped into the van of someone else's parent, and I am buckled and hurried back to the group trying to hide in shame. I'm 21 now, so this was about 11 to 12 years ago. Share your embarrassing memories that still make you cringe in the comments. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to catch part 2.